Okay, guys, today is January 10th. Let's continue our book reading series, Alice in Wonderland. Chapter 7, A Mad Tea Party. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hare were having a tea at it. A Dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it, and talking over its head. Very, very uncomfortable for the Dormouse, thought Alice. Very uncomfortable for the Dormouse, thought, thought Alice. Only as it only as it's asleep. I suppose it doesn't matter. Only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room, no room, they cried out when they saw Alice coming. There is plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. Have some wine, the March Hare said in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but there was nothing on it but tea. I don't see any wine, she remarked. There isn't any, said the March Hare. Then it wasn't very civil of you. Then it was. Then it wasn't very civil of you. Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it, said Alice angrily. It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited, said the March Hare. I didn't know it was your table, said Alice. It's laid for a great many more than three. Your hair, your hair wants cutting, said the Hare. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity, and this was his first speech. You should learn not to make personal remarks, Alice said with some severity. It's very rude. The Hare opened his eyes very wide on hearing this, but all he said was, "Why is why is a haven like a writing desk? Why is a raven like a writing desk? Come, come, we shall have some fun now," thought Alice. "I'm glad we've begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that," she added aloud. "Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer? Do you mean do you mean that you do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it? Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?" said the March Hare. "Exactly so," said Alice. "Then you should say what you mean," the March Hare went on. "I do," Alice hastily replied. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know." "Not the same thing, not the same thing a bit," said the Hare. "You might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing I eat what I see. You might just say as well You might just as well say at the March Hare that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like. You might just as well say, added the March Hare. You might you might just as well say you might just as well say, added the Dormouse, who seemed to be talking in his sleep, that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe. It is the same thing with you. It is the same thing. It is the same thing with you, said the Hare. And here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute, while Alice thought over all she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't much. The Hare was the first to break the silence. "What day of the month is it?" he said, turning to Alice. He had taken his watch out of He had taken his watch out of his pocket and was looking at it uneasily, shaking it every now and then, and holding it to his ear. Alice considered a little, and then said, "The fourth." "2 days wrong. 2 days wrong," sighed the Hare. I told you, butter. I told you, butter, you wouldn't suit the works. He added, looking angrily at the March Hare. It was the best butter. The March Hare. It was the best butter. The March Hare meekly replied. Yes, but some crumbs must have got it. Yes, but must some crumbs must get. Yes, but some crumbs must have got in as well. The hatter grumbled. You shouldn't have put in. You shouldn't have put it in with the bread knife. The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. Then he dipped into it his cup of tea and looked at it again. At it again. But he could think of nothing better to say than his first remark. It was the best butter, you know. 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 Alice has been looking over his shoulders with some curiosity. What a funny watch, she remarked. It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is. It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is. It tells the day of the month and doesn't tell what o'clock it is. Again, it tells the date of the month and doesn't tell what clock it is. Why should it? Muttered the hatter. Does your watch tell you what year it is? Of course not, Alice replied very readily. But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together. Which is just the case with mine, said the hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The hatter's remark seemed to have no sort of meaning in it, and yet it was certainly English. I don't quite understand you, she said as politely as she could. The dormouse is asleep again, said the hatter, and he poured a little hot tea upon its nose. The dormouse shook its head impatiently, and said, without opening its eyes, of course, just what I was going to remark it myself. Of course, just what I was going to remark myself. Have you guessed the riddle yet? Have you guessed the riddle yet? The hare said, turning to Alice again. No, I give it up, Alice replied. What's the answer? I haven't I haven't the slightest idea. I haven't the slightest idea, said the hatter. Nor I, said the March Hare. Alice Alice sighed rarely. I don't think I think you might do something better with the time, she said. Then waste it then waste it waste it in asking riddles that you have no answers. If you knew time as well as I do, said the hatter, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, said Alice. Of course you don't, the hatter said, tossing his head contemptuously. I dare say you never even spoke to time. Perhaps not, Alice cautiously replied. But I know I have to beat time when I learn music. Ah, that accounts for it, said the hatter. He won't he won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, you'd do almost anything you like with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You don't have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner. 1:30, time for dinner. I only wish it was, the March Hare said to itself in a whisper. That would be grand, certainly. That would be grand, certainly, said Alice thoughtfully. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know. Not at first, perhaps, said the hare. but you could keep it to half past one as long as you liked. Is that the way you is that the way you manage? Is that the way you manage? Alice asked. Alice asked. The herald shook his head mournfully. Not I, he replied. We quarreled. We quarreled. We quarreled last March, just before he went mad, pointing, pointing with his teaspoon, pointing, pointing with his teaspoon at the March hare. It was at great concert. It was at the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing, "Twinkle, twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder you're at. Twinkle, 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 little hat, twinkle, 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 little bat, how I wonder where you're at." You know the song, perhaps. You know the song, perhaps. You know the song, perhaps. I've heard something like it, said Alice. It goes on, the hatter continued, in this way. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle. Here the dormouse shook itself, and it began singing in its sleep. Twinkle, 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 and went on so long that they had to pitch, pitch it to make it stop. Well, I'd hardly finished the first verse, said the hatter, when the queen jumped up and brawled out, his mother in the time! Off with his head! Off with his head! How dreadfully savage! How how dreadfully savage! Exclaimed Alice. And ever since that, the hatter went on in a mournful tone. And ever since that, the hatter went on in a mournful tone. He wouldn't do a he wouldn't do a thing I ask. He wouldn't do a thing I ask. He won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now. A bright idea came into Alice's head. Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here? She asked. Yeah, that's it, said the hatter with a sigh. It's always it's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things between whiles. And you keep moving round, I suppose, said Alice. Exactly so, said the hatter, as the things get used up. But what happens when you come to the beginning again? Alice ventured to ask. Suppose we change the subject. The March Hare, the March Hare interrupted, yawning. I'm getting tired of this. I've also the young lady tells us a story. I'm afraid I don't know one, said Alice, rather alarmed at that proposal. Then the dormouse shall, they both cried. Wake up, dormouse! And they pinched it on both sides at once. The dormouse slowly opened his eyes. I wasn't asleep, he said in a hoarse, feeble voice. I heard every word. I heard every word you fellows were as. I heard every word you fellows were saying. Tell us a story, said the March Hare. Yes, please do, pleaded Alice. And and be quick about it, added the hare, or you'll be asleep again before it's done. Once upon a time, there were three little sisters, the Dormouse began in a great hurry, and their names were Elsie, Lacie, and Tilly, and they lived at the bottom of a well. What did they live on? Said Alice, who always took a great interest in questions of eating and drinking. They lived on treacle, said the Dormouse, after thinking a minute or two. They couldn't have done that, Alice gently remarked. They'd be have been ill. They'd be have they'd have been ill. So they were, said the dormouse. Very ill. Alice tried to fancy to herself what such an extraordinary ways of living would be like. But it puzzled her too much, so she went on. But why did they live at the bottom of a well? Take some more tea, the March Hare said to Alice, very earnestly. I'd had nothing yet. I'd had nothing yet. I've had net. I've had nothing yet. Alice replied in an offended tone. But I can't take him. So I can't take more. You mean you can't take less? You mean you mean you can take less? Said the hare. It's very easy to take more than nothing. Nobody asked your opinion. Nobody asked your opinion, said Alice. Who is making personal who is making personal remarks now? The hare asked triumphantly. Alice did not quite know what to say to this, so she helped herself to some tea and bread and butter, and then turned to the Dormouse and repeated her question. Why did they live at the bottom of a well? The Dormouse again took a minute or two to think about it, and then said, "It was a treacle well." "There is no such a thing." Alice was beginning Alice was beginning very angrily, but the hare and the March hare went, "Shh, shh." And the Dormouse sulkily remarked, "If you can't be civil, you'd better finish the story for yourself." "No, please, go on," Alice said very humbly. "I won't interrupt again. I dare say there may be one. I dare say that may be one. I dare say there may be one." "One, indeed," said the Dormouse indignantly. However, he consented to go on. "And so, these three little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know." "What did they draw?" said Alice, quite forgetting her promise. "Freckle," said the Dormouse, without considering at all this time. "I want a clean cup," interrupted the Hatter. "Let's all move one place on." He moved and he spoke, and the Dormouse followed him. The March the March Hare moved into the Dormouse place, and Alice rather unwillingly unwillingly, the March Hare moved into the Dormouse place, and Alice rather unwillingly took the place of the March Hare. The Hare was the only one who got any advantage from the change, and Alice was a good deal worse off than before, as the March Hare had just upset the milk jug into his plate. Alice did not wish to offend the Dormouse again, so she began very cautiously. "But I don't understand. Where did they draw the treacle from? You can draw water. You can draw water out of a water well. You can draw a water. You can draw water out of a water well," said the hare. "So I should think you could draw a treacle out of a treacle well, eh, stupid? So I should think you could draw a treacle out of a treacle well, eh, stupid?" "But they were in the well. But they were in the well," Alice said to the Dormouse, not choosing to notice this last remark. "Of course they were," said the Dormouse. "Well in." This answer was so This answer so confused poor Alice that she let the Dormouse go on for some time without interrupting it. "They were learning to draw. They, they were learning to draw," the Dormouse went on, yawning and rubbing its eyes, for it was getting very sleepy. "And they drew all manner of things. Everything that begins with an M." "Why with an M?" said Alice. "Why not?" said the March Hare. Alice was silent. The Dormouse had closed its very eyes by this time, and was going off into a doze. But, on being pinched by the Hare, it woke up again with a little shriek, and went on. "That begins with an M, such as mouse traps, and the moon, and memory, and muchness. You know you say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see such a thing as a drawing of a muchness? Really? Really? Now you ask me? Said Alice, very much confused. I don't think. Then you shouldn't talk, said the Hatter. This piece of rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up in great disgust and walked off. The Dormouse fell asleep instantly, and neither of the others took the least notice of her going, though she though she looked back once or twice, half hoping that they would call after her. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into the teapot. At any rate, I'll never go there again. At any rate, I'll never go there again. At any rate, I at any at any rate, I'll never go there again. At any rate, I'll never go there again, said Alice, as she picked her way through the wood. It's the stupidest tea party I've ever was in all my life. Just just as she said this, just just as she said this, she noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it. That is very curious, she thought. But everything's curious today. I think I may as well go in at once. And when she went, and in she went. And but everything's curious today. I think I may as well go in at once. And in she went. Once more, once more she found herself in a long hall, and close to the little glass table. Now I'll manage better this time, she said to herself, and began by taking the little golden key and unlocking the door that led into the garden. Then she went to work nibbling at the mushroom. She had kept a piece of it in her pocket till she was about a foot high. Then she walked down the little passage, and then she found herself at last in the beautiful garden, among the bright flower beds and the cool fountains. And that's the end of Very Hard Chapter 7. I don't know why, but it was very hard to read this chapter. I tried to make some voices for some characters, and it's not worked very well. And I think when I changed my voice, I lost my ability to pronunciate the words. The pronunciation of the words became harder, and that's something I have to practice. Well, until next time, goodbye.